The night my stepfather struck me in front of 37 people, something inside me snapped. Their laughter still echoes in my head, the clinking of glasses, the flash of phones, the sound of betrayal. They thought I'd stay silent forever. They were wrong. What happened next would destroy everything he'd built over 20 years, and I orchestrated every second of it. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about the night I stopped being their victim and became their reckoning. My name is Emily Carter, and for 6 years, I was the invisible backbone holding my family together. At 29, I should have been building my own life in Blue Ridge, North Carolina, but instead, I was trapped in a cycle of giving that would ultimately lead to my breaking point. I work as a logistics coordinator at Westport Freight Solutions, a mid-sized shipping company where I've climbed from entry-level to management through sheer determination. The irony isn't lost on me. I could organize supply chains across 3 states, but couldn't see the toxic patterns in my own home. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., I'd wake up in the small apartment I kept but rarely used, drive 20 minutes to my mother's house to make breakfast for everyone, then head to work by 7. This had been my routine since Dad died when I was 23. Mom remarried Raymond Miller 2 years after Dad's funeral. Raymond was everything Dad wasn't loud where Dad was quiet, demanding where Dad was gentle, controlling where Dad was free. He owned a small contracting business that barely stayed afloat, though you'd never know it from the way he carried himself. Silver-haired and broad-shouldered, he had the kind of presence that commanded attention at church socials and neighborhood barbecues. People called him a real man's man, whatever that meant. To me, it meant he expected women to serve and stay silent. The first time he asked me for money, it was for Mom. "Your mother needs a new car," he'd said, standing in my office doorway one evening. The transmissions shot on the Honda. I wrote the check for $8,000 without hesitation. Mom needed reliable transportation for her job at the elementary school. That's what family does. Right. But one loan became many. The roof needed replacing after Hurricane Florence, $18,000. My half-brother Tyler, Raymond's son from his first marriage who Mom had practically raised, needed college tuition $42,000 over 4 years. The house needed renovations. Raymond's truck broke down. Medical bills piled up. I paid them all, telling myself it was temporary. That once Raymond's business picked up, once Tyler graduated, once the house was fixed up, things would change. My checking account became their emergency fund. My savings account, their retirement plan. While my coworkers bought homes and took vacations, I worked overtime and watched my dreams shrink to fit around their needs. But it wasn't just the money that drained me, it was the complete lack of recognition. No thank you cards, no acknowledgement at family dinners, nothing. Worse, Raymond would make cutting remarks about my career obsession and inability to keep a man while eating food I'd paid for, under a roof I'd helped maintain. His relatives were no better. At family gatherings, they'd whisper about the poor spinster daughter who buried herself in work because she couldn't find a husband. Raymond's sister Janet once told me, with fake concern dripping from her voice, that I should consider freezing my eggs before it's too late. This was at Thanksgiving dinner, right after I'd paid for the entire meal. The truth was, I'd had relationships, good ones, but they all ended the same way with men who couldn't understand why I gave so much to people who gave so little back. You're not their parent," my ex-boyfriend Marcus had said before walking away. "You're their ATM." I'd been furious at him then. Now, assembling receipts in my apartment at 2 a.m. after the worst night of my life, I realized he'd been right all along. Raymond's 60th birthday party was supposed to be the event of the year. He'd been planning it for months, or rather, making Mom plan it while he dictated demands. The guest list had grown from 20 to 37, the menu from simple barbecue to a catered affair with prime rib and an open bar. When Mom called me crying about the $5,000 quote from the caterer, I did what I always did, transferred the money, and told her not to worry. I'd already paid for the tent rental and the DJ. What was another few thousand? The party was held on a Saturday evening in late September. That perfect North Carolina weather where the humidity finally breaks and the air turns crisp. I arrived at 6:45 p.m. Wearing the navy dress Mom had specifically requested because it wouldn't draw attention. The backyard had been transformed into something from a magazine string, lights twisted through the oak trees, white tablecloths fluttering in the breeze, a professional bartender manning a full bar setup I'd funded but wouldn't get credit for. The guests were already mingling when I walked in. Raymond's construction crew buddies clustered near the bar, their wives gossiping by the dessert table. Church friends, neighbors, his extended family from Asheville, all there to celebrate a man they saw as successful and generous. If only they knew whose money paid for the illusion. I was refilling my water glass when Raymond's cousin Dale started his toast. Dale was drunk, his face flushed and words slurring slightly as he raised his beer. To Raymond, he began, a man who built his success with his own two hands, who never asked for handouts, who shows us all what real independence looks like. The crowd cheered. I stood frozen, water glass halfway to my lips. Unlike some people, Dale continued, his eyes finding me across the yard, who think writing checks makes them important. Hey, Emily, when you gonna stop playing career woman and give your mom some grandkids? Or are you too busy being everyone's meal ticket to find a man who'll put up with you? The laughter started as a ripple. Someone whistled. Raymond was grinning, that cruel smile I'd learned to recognize. Mom looked at her feet. I set down my glass carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. That's inappropriate, Dale, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. And considering I paid for this party, including the beer in your hand, maybe you should— Nobody asked you to pay for anything. Raymond cut in, his voice sharp. He'd had several bourbons by then. I could tell by the way he swayed slightly. Always throwing money around, trying to buy respect you haven't earned. You think you're better than us because you have some office job. I think I deserve basic courtesy in return for— In return, Raymond's voice rose to a roar. You want returns, like this is some business transaction. Family doesn't work that way. Girl, family gives freely. Freely. The word escaped before I could stop it. I've given $68,000 in the last 3 years alone. How's that for freely? The silence was deafening. Then Raymond moved. Fast for a drunk man, faster than I expected. His hand caught my shoulder, shoving hard. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the patio edge. I went down hard, my knee scraping against concrete, my dress tearing. The laughter exploded instantly. Not shocked gasps or concerned murmurs, laughter. Phones appeared, their cameras pointed at me like weapons. Someone actually applauded. I looked up from the ground, searching for one sympathetic face, finding none. Mom stood frozen by the cake table, her hand over her mouth but making no move to help me. I started to push myself up, and that's when Raymond's hand connected with my face. The slap was so hard it knocked me sideways, my vision blurring, my ear ringing. Don't you ever embarrass me in my own home again, he snarled. The crowd roared with approval. Someone shouted, About time someone put her in her place. Another voice called out, That's what happens when women forget their role. I stood on shaking legs, blood trickling from my scraped knee, my cheek burning. 37 people watched me walk to my car. Not one person helped. Not one person protested. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, already returning to their drinks and conversations. The entertainment over. The humiliation at the party wasn't my first warning sign. It was merely the culmination of years of smaller betrayals I'd chosen to ignore. Sitting in my apartment that night, ice pressed against my swollen cheek, I finally allowed myself to remember everything I'd pushed down. The financial exploitation had started small, almost invisibly. After Dad died, I'd thrown myself into work, earning promotion after promotion at Westport Freight Solutions. My salary had grown from $35,000 to $92,000 in 6 years, but my bank account never reflected it. Every raise, every bonus, every overtime check had been siphoned away by family emergencies that, in hindsight, were anything but. The roof replacement after Hurricane Florence, I'd paid $18,000 for what I later learned was a $10,000 job. Where did the extra $8,000 go Raymond's pocket? Most likely. He'd insisted on handling the contractors himself, said he could get us a better deal through his connections. Mom had been so grateful, telling everyone at church how Raymond had saved the house. No mention of whose money actually paid for it. Tyler's college tuition was another source of pain. $42,000 over 4 years for a degree he never finished. He'd dropped out junior year to join Raymond's construction crew, but somehow I was still paying off student loans that I suspected never existed. When I'd asked to see the loan documents, Raymond had exploded, accusing me of not trusting family. Mom had cried, begging me to apologize. I did, and kept paying. The car I'd bought Mom, a practically new Honda CR-V, was registered in Raymond's name. I'd discovered this accidentally when reviewing insurance documents. When I questioned it, he'd said it was easier for tax purposes. I was too tired to fight, too conditioned to compliance to recognize the red flag it was. But the money was only part of it. The emotional manipulation cut deeper than any financial drain. Raymond had a gift for public humiliation disguised as humor. At Christmas dinner 2 years ago, he'd announced to everyone that I'd probably be alone forever because men don't like women who think they're the boss. When I'd gotten a promotion to senior coordinator, he'd told the entire church congregation that I was compensating for an empty womb within full inbox. His relatives had picked up the theme. Janet, his sister, loved to share articles about declining fertility rates on my Facebook wall with comments like, "Thinking of you, sweetie." His brother Tom once introduced me to his friend as the family's cash cow, career woman. They'd all laughed, I'd smiled and taken it, like I always did. The most painful revelation came from an overheard conversation 6 months ago. I'd arrived early for Sunday dinner and heard voices from the kitchen. Raymond was talking to Tom, their voices carrying through the open window. "The girl's too invested now to pull out," Raymond had said. 6 years of payments. She won't want to admit she wasted all that money. Classic sunk cost fallacy. My first wife was the same way, kept giving long after she should have stopped, hoping things would change. "But what if she gets married?" Tom had asked. "Some man might not want to support your lifestyle." Raymond had laughed. "Look at her, 30 in a year, married to her job, and too damaged to recognize a healthy relationship if it hit her in the face. She'll be funding us until we die, and probably leave us everything in her will out of guilt." I'd sat in my car for 20 minutes, processing what I'd heard, the calculation of it, the cold assessment of my worth not as a person but as a resource to be exploited. I'd gone inside anyway, served dinner anyway, smiled anyway, because that's what I'd been trained to do. There were other incidents, dozens of them, each one chipping away at my sense of self. The time Raymond had borrowed my credit card for an emergency and ran up $3,000 in charges at a casino. The weekend Mom had called me sobbing because Raymond had spent their mortgage payment on a new rifle, and could I please help just this once? It was never just once. I'd kept every receipt, every bank statement, every email. Not out of suspicion initially, but out of habit. I was a logistics coordinator. Documentation was second nature. Now, spreading them across my living room floor at 3 a.m, they told a story I'd been too blind to read. $68,000 in 3 years was actually conservative. The real number, including interest on credit cards I'd used when my savings ran dry, was closer to $90,000. I didn't answer my phone for 3 days after the party. Mom called 47 times. Raymond sent texts that ranged from fake apologies to threats. Tyler left voicemails saying I was overreacting. I ignored them all, sitting in my apartment with the curtains drawn, staring at the bruise on my face that had turned purple-green, and finally allowing myself to feel the rage I'd suppressed for 6 years. It was Rachel who pulled me out of my spiral, my only real friend, the one person who'd consistently told me the truth about my situation. She showed up at my door on Tuesday evening with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, using the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. Jesus, Emily, she said when she saw my face. Please tell me your pressing charges against the man 37 people saw as justified in disciplining me with my own mother as a witness who'd testify against me. I laughed bitterly. That's a battle I'd lose. Rachel set down the food and looked at me with the kind of intensity that made her an excellent prosecutor. Then fight a different battle, one you can win. We spent that evening mapping out every financial transaction I'd made for the family. Rachel, with her legal background, helped me organize everything into categories: documented loans, gifts, household expenses, and what she called fraudulent extraction. By midnight, we had a clear picture that made my stomach turn. The house Mom and Raymond lived in, I'd paid 70% of the mortgage over the last 6 years. It would be completely paid off in 8 more months. You've essentially bought them a house, Rachel said, flipping through the bank statements. And look at this. She pointed to a series of deposits. Raymond's been claiming you as a dependent on his taxes to get deductions, while simultaneously taking your money. That's tax fraud. But the real discovery came when I logged into my old email account, the one I'd used before getting my work email. There, buried in the spam folder, were emails from First Baptist Church's charity committee. Raymond had been receiving financial assistance from them for 3 years running, claiming he had no family support and was struggling to keep his home. The church had given him nearly $15,000 in aid. He's been double-dipping, I said, staring at the screen. Taking from me while claiming to be destitute. Rachel leaned back, a smile playing at her lips that I recognized from when she was building a case. You know what this is. This is leverage. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet, all the insults I'd swallowed, all the humiliation I'd endured. I thought about 37 people laughing as I bled on concrete. I thought about my mother's silence, Raymond's sneer, the phones recording my destruction for their entertainment. I want them to know how it feels, I said quietly. To be exposed, to be humiliated, to lose everything they thought was secure. Rachel nodded. Then we need to be smart about this. No emotional reactions, no angry confrontations. You build a case like you'd build a logistics chain, every piece in place, every connection documented, everything traceable. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I requested bank records going back 6 years. I hired a forensic accountant for 2 hours of consultation to verify my findings. I discovered that Raymond had not only been claiming me as a dependent, but had also opened a credit card in my name 2 years ago, running up $12,000 in debt, identity theft on top of fraud. I also reached out carefully to others who might have information. Raymond's first wife, Patricia, now lived in Tennessee. Our phone conversation was illuminating. He did the same thing to me, she said, her voice tired. Drained my inheritance, destroyed my credit, turned everyone against me when I finally fought back. I'm just glad you're getting out now. I wasted 15 years. His former business partner, Steve, was equally revealing. Raymond's business hasn't made a profit in 5 years. He's been living entirely off your mother's income and, I'm guessing now, your money? He owes me $30,000 from when we dissolved the partnership. Good luck getting anything back. By the end of 2 weeks, I had everything: financial records, emails, tax documents, character testimonies, and a clear pattern of fraud spanning years. Rachel helped me organize it all into a neat package that told an undeniable story. You could destroy him with this, she said, reviewing the final compilation. The tax fraud alone would trigger an IRS audit. The identity theft is a felony. The church fraud would ruin him in the community. I held the folder containing 6 years of receipts, lies, and betrayal. Then let's destroy him. But we do it my way. He humiliated me publicly. He gets the same treatment. What do you have in mind? Rachel asked. I smiled for the first time since the party. Complete and total exposure. Every lie, every theft, every manipulation, all of it comes to light at once. No escape routes, no damage control, just truth hitting from every direction. The email took me 3 days to perfect. Every word had to be precise, every accusation backed by evidence, every document attached in the right order. Rachel reviewed it twice, suggesting legal language that would protect me while maximizing impact. By Sunday evening, it was ready, a surgical strike disguised as a family update. The subject line was simple: the truth about Raymond Miller documentation attached. I scheduled it to send Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., exactly when Raymond would be at the First Baptist Church's monthly charity committee meeting, where he was scheduled to request another round of financial assistance. The recipient list was carefully curated, all 37 party guests whose emails I had: the 12-member church charity committee, Raymond's extended family, his construction crew, the neighborhood association, and several of Mom's co-workers who donated to Raymond's various emergencies over the years. The email began professionally: to everyone who attended Raymond Miller's 60th birthday celebration, and to those who have supported the Miller family through various charitable efforts, I feel obligated to share some important information that has come to light regarding the financial situation of the Miller household. Then I laid out the facts with cold precision. Screenshots of bank transfers totaling $90,000 over 6 years, the mortgage documents showing my payments, Raymond's tax returns claiming me as a dependent while I lived separately, the credit card he'd opened in my name without permission, the church aid applications where he'd claimed to have no family support, submitted on the same dates I'd transferred him money. The most damning section detailed the house situation. As of this writing, the Miller residence at 4827 Oak Grove Lane has only 8 payments remaining, totaling $12,000. I have paid $118,000 toward this mortgage while never being listed on the deed. Mr. Miller has simultaneously received $15,000 in church assistance for housing insecurity during this period. I included Patricia's testimony about Raymond's pattern of financial abuse, Steve's statement about the failed business and unpaid debts, and a particularly interesting document, a screenshot from Raymond's Facebook where he'd posted photos from a Las Vegas trip 2 days after receiving emergency church funds for medical expenses. The final attachment was the video from the party. Someone had posted it on Instagram, and I'd managed to download it before they deleted it. 37 people laughing as a 60-year-old man struck his stepdaughter for mentioning her financial contributions. I added a single line of commentary: this is how the Miller family treats their primary financial supporter. At 8:31 a.m. Monday morning, my phone exploded. The first call was from Mom, screaming incoherently. I didn't answer. The second was from Raymond, his voicemail full of legal threats and obscenities. The third was from Pastor Williams. Emily. His voice was shaken on the message. The committee needs to speak with you immediately about these allegations. This is extremely serious. By noon, the chaos had spread like wildfire. Janet called me a vindictive bitch in a voicemail that Rachel advised me to save. Dale sent texts threatening to handle this like men do. Tyler wrote a long message about family loyalty and how I'd destroyed everything, but between the threats and anger, other messages started appearing. 3 church committee members thanked me for bringing this to light. A neighbor confessed they'd suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known what. One of Mom's co-workers admitted she'd given Raymond $500 just last month for Mom's cancer treatment. Mom had never had cancer. The church moved fast. By Tuesday afternoon, Pastor Williams called to inform me that they'd launched a formal investigation into fraud. They'd already discovered that Raymond had been receiving aid from 2 other churches in neighboring towns, using different sob stories for each. We'll be pursuing legal action to recover the funds, Pastor Williams said carefully. Would you be willing to provide testimony? Every document I have is yours, I replied. Raymond tried damage control. He called a family meeting at the house Tuesday evening, demanding I attend to explain my lies. When I refused, he went on Facebook, posting a rant about ungrateful children and mental illness, suggesting I was having a breakdown. It backfired spectacularly when 3 people commented with screenshots from my email, asking him to explain the evidence. By Wednesday, the IRS had been notified not by me, but by someone from the church committee who had a cousin working in tax enforcement. The credit card company launched a fraud investigation after I filed a police report for identity theft. Raymond's construction crew dissolved when Steve shared my email with them, revealing that Raymond owed them all back wages he'd claimed he couldn't afford while taking Vegas trips. Mom finally called me Wednesday night at 11:45 p.m., her voice small and broken. "How could you do this to us? How could you stand there and watch him hit me?" I countered. "How could you let him steal from me for 6 years? How could you choose him over your own daughter?" Silence. Then, he's going to lose everything. He should have thought of that before he committed fraud, before he hit me, before he humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Where will I live? The question hung between us. The mother who'd chosen silence while I bled. The woman who'd enabled my exploitation for 6 years, who'd stood by as her husband degraded and assaulted me. "That's no longer my problem to solve," I said, and hung up. The dominoes fell faster than I'd anticipated. By Thursday morning, Raymond's carefully constructed image had completely shattered. The church formally announced they were pursuing criminal charges for fraud. The IRS opened an audit going back 7 years. 3 more credit cards surfaced that he'd opened using my social security number, maxed out and defaulted, destroying my credit score I'd worked so hard to build. But the most explosive revelation came from an unexpected source. Amber, Raymond's 17-year-old niece, reached out to me Thursday afternoon through Facebook Messenger. "Aunt Emily, I saw your email. I need to tell someone what Uncle Raymond did to me when I was 15. My parents didn't believe me, but maybe now they will." My blood went cold. I immediately called Rachel, who connected Amber with the appropriate authorities. By Friday, a second investigation had opened, this one far more serious than financial fraud. Amber's parents, who'd been among the loudest voices defending Raymond, went silent. The community's reaction shifted from shock to rage. The video of Raymond hitting me, which had seemed justified to them in the moment, now looked different in light of everything else. People started reaching out with their own stories. Raymond had borrowed money from at least 12 people, never repaying a cent. He'd submitted false insurance claims for his contracting business. He'd even stolen tools from job sites and blamed his workers. Saturday morning, the house of cards completely collapsed. Raymond was arrested at 6:15 a.m. on charges of fraud, identity theft, and pending investigation for the allegations Amber had made. Mom called me hysterical, begging me to help with bail. "I don't have any money," I said truthfully. "I gave it all to you, for 6 years. The bail was set at $50,000. No one would help him. His construction crew wanted their back wages. His relatives were dealing with Amber's revelation. The church wanted their money back. Mom tried to use the house as collateral, only to discover that with the fraud charges, the bank had frozen their assets pending investigation. Tyler finally showed his true colors, abandoning his father and moving in with his girlfriend's family, but not before sending me a text, "You destroyed our family." "Your father destroyed our family," I replied. "I just stopped hiding it." The social media explosion was almost surreal to watch. The video of Raymond hitting me went viral in our local community Facebook groups, now reframed as "Local church con man assaults daughter who exposed his fraud." People who'd laughed that night were now claiming they'd been too shocked to react or didn't realize what was happening. Dale deleted his Facebook entirely. Janet posted a long statement about how she'd always suspected something was wrong and was praying for healing. The news even made the local paper, "Blue Ridge Man faces multiple fraud charges after stepdaughter exposes years of financial abuse." They didn't name me, but everyone knew. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, which I declined on Rachel's advice. Mom's situation deteriorated rapidly. Her co-workers, learning she'd known about Raymond taking money from them for fake cancer treatment, ostracized her. The elementary school placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation into whether she'd been complicit in the fraud. She showed up at my apartment Sunday evening, looking haggard and decades older. "I have nowhere to go," she said from my doorway. I didn't invite her in. You had somewhere to go. You had a daughter who loved you, who would have done anything for you. You chose Raymond. I was scared of him, she whispered, but not scared enough to protect me from him, not scared enough to stop taking my money, not scared enough to leave when you saw what he was. Emily, please, I'm your mother. You were supposed to be my mother that night, too. When 37 people watched him assault me. Where was my mother then? She started crying. I've lost everything. So did I. 6 years ago, I lost my mother the day you chose him over me. I lost my family every time you stayed silent while he humiliated me. I lost $90,000 that could have been my future. The only difference is now you're losing too. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. The same way you expected me to figure out how to pay for everything while being degraded and abused? The same way you let me figure out how to drive home with a concussion after your husband hit me? She stood there for a long moment, perhaps finally understanding what she'd enabled. Then she turned and walked away. It was the last time we spoke. By Monday, 2 weeks after the party, the full extent of Raymond's crimes was public. 14 counts of fraud, 6 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of tax evasion, and the investigation into Amber's allegations was moving forward. The man who'd stood like a king at his birthday party, who'd struck me down while others applauded, was now facing 20 years in prison. The church contacted me about pursuing a civil suit to recover their funds. I provided every document they needed. The IRS investigator assigned to the case told me I might be eligible for a whistleblower reward if they recovered the evaded taxes. The credit card companies began the process of clearing the fraudulent accounts from my credit report. But the moment that truly marked the end came when someone leaked the jail phone recording of Raymond calling his brother Tom, begging for bail money. His words, echoing through the static, "That ungrateful bitch destroyed me after everything I did for her." Tom's response was caught on tape, too. "Everything you did, Ray, you stole from her. You hit her. Hell, you bragged about how stupid she was for keeping paying. You did this to yourself." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. 3 months after that email destroyed Raymond's world, we sat in the Durham County Superior Court for the criminal trial. I was the star witness for the prosecution, my evidence forming the backbone of their case. Raymond, who'd once stood so tall and commanding, looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his silver hair now gray and unkempt. Rachel sat beside me in the gallery, my silent support. Mom was nowhere to be seen. She'd fled to her sisters in Florida after losing her job and the house. The 37 party guests who'd laughed at my humiliation. Only 3 showed up, subpoenaed as witnesses. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Dana Richardson, walked me through my testimony methodically. Every transfer, every receipt, every humiliation laid out in clinical detail. When she played the video of the party, the courtroom went silent. The slap echoed in the small space, followed by the laughter of 36 people. "Can you identify the man who struck you in this video?" Dana asked. "Raymond Miller," I said clearly, looking directly at him for the first time in months. "My former stepfather." His defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, suggesting I'd orchestrated everything out of jealousy or mental instability. But the evidence was insurmountable. Bank records don't lie. Fraudulent tax returns don't lie. Forged credit applications don't lie. The church's financial secretary testified about the $15,000 in aid Raymond had received while I was simultaneously supporting him. 3 different pastors from neighboring churches testified about similar schemes. The IRS agent detailed the tax fraud that spanned 7 years, but the testimony that truly sealed Raymond's fate came from Patricia, his ex-wife, who'd flown in from Tennessee. She detailed 15 years of the same pattern: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and finally, physical violence when she'd tried to leave. The judge's face darkened as she spoke. "He told me no one would believe me," Patricia said, her voice steady after all these years. "He said I was nothing without him, that I should be grateful he even stayed with someone so pathetic. When I finally got the courage to divorce him, He'd already destroyed my credit, emptied my inheritance, and turned my own family against me with lies. It took me 10 years to rebuild my life. When Amber took the stand via closed-circuit video to protect her identity as a minor, Raymond's remaining support evaporated. Her testimony was careful, guided by a victim's advocate, but devastating. The thing that had happened when she was 15, it was worse than anyone had imagined. 2 other young women came forward during the trial with similar stories, though their cases were outside the statute of limitations. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all 14 counts of fraud, guilty on 6 counts of identity theft, guilty on 3 counts of tax evasion, guilty on 1 count of sexual assault of a minor, guilty on 1 count of assault and battery my assault, captured on video. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. I submitted a victim impact statement but chose not to read it in person. Dana read it for me while I watched from the gallery. Raymond Miller didn't just steal my money. He stole 6 years of my life, my sense of family, my ability to trust. He made me believe that love meant accepting abuse, that family meant enabling destruction. The $90,000 can be quantified, but the therapy I'll need, the relationships I lost, the mother who chose him over me, those losses are immeasurable. I don't seek revenge. I seek justice and the assurance that he cannot do this to another family, another daughter, another child. Raymond was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 10. He was ordered to pay full restitution to me, the churches, and the other victims, though everyone knew he had nothing left to give. He'd lost his business, his home, his reputation, and now his freedom. As the bailiff led him away, Raymond turned to look at me one last time. The man who'd once towered over me, who'd hit me while others cheered, who'd treated me like an ATM with no feelings, he looked broken. He mouthed something that might have been, "I'm sorry," or might have been another curse. I didn't care enough to figure out which. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I'd prepared a brief statement with Rachel's help. Today, justice was served. My story isn't unique. Financial abuse within families is more common than we admit. If you're in a situation like mine, document everything. Seek help. Don't wait 6 years like I did. And to the 37 people who laughed while I was assaulted, your silence enabled this. Your laughter empowered him. I hope you remember that the next time you witness abuse and choose entertainment over intervention. That evening, I sat in my empty apartment, the weight of the last few months finally hitting me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Mom. "I know you hate me. I deserve it. Raymond got what he deserved. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you needed. I'm sorry for everything." I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges once burned should stay ash. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I was loading boxes into a U-Haul when I heard footsteps behind me in the parking lot. It was 4:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, the North Carolina sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. I turned, expecting another reporter or perhaps one of Raymond's relatives with more threats. Instead, it was him out on bail while appealing his sentence, though his lawyer had assured me he'd be back in custody within days. He looked like a ghost of the man who'd ruled that birthday party just months ago. His clothes hung loose on his frame, his face gaunt, his hands shaking slightly. There was a monitoring ankle bracelet visible above his shoe. "You destroyed everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "No," I replied calmly, continuing to load my boxes. "You destroyed everything. I just stopped hiding it. I need you to write a letter to the judge. For the appeal. Say you exaggerated, that you were emotional, that, Raymond." I set down the box I was holding and faced him fully. "You hit me in front of 37 people. You stole $90,000. You defrauded 3 churches. You assaulted a child. Which part should I say I exaggerated?" His face contorted with rage, the same expression I'd seen before the slap. For a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. Then his shoulders sagged. "The house is gone," he said quietly. Your mother is gone. Tyler won't speak to me. My family thinks I'm a monster. I have nothing. You had everything, I countered. A wife who loved you, a stepdaughter who would have done anything for her family, a son, a home, a community that respected you. You threw it all away for greed and control. I was going to pay you back, he mumbled, the lie so weak even he didn't seem to believe it. With what? The money you were stealing from churches, the credit cards you opened in my name, or maybe with the contracting business that hasn't made a profit in 5 years. He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps finally seeing me as a person rather than a resource. You're really leaving. Tomorrow morning, new job, new city, new life. One where nobody knows me as the woman who got slapped at a party or the ungrateful daughter who destroyed her family. Just Emily Carter, logistics coordinator, building something that's actually mine. Where, somewhere you'll never find me. Somewhere the name Raymond Miller means nothing. He took a step forward, and I held up my phone. I'm recording this entire conversation. Your bail conditions prohibit you from contacting me. Leave now, or I call the police. For a second, the old Raymond flickered in his eyes, the one who would have grabbed the phone, who would have intimidated me into silence, but that Raymond had power then. This one had none. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly, turning to go. I'm free, I replied. That's better than happy. He walked away slowly, like an old man, though he was only 60. As his figure disappeared around the corner, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no lingering anger. Just nothing. He'd become irrelevant to my story. I finished loading the truck as the sun set, my entire life fitting into a 16-foot rental. Rachel arrived at 7 p.m., with pizza and beer for my last night in Blue Ridge. Any second thoughts? She asked, looking around my empty apartment. None. I should have left years ago. You weren't ready then. You are now. We sat on the floor, eating off paper plates, and she filled me in on the town gossip. 3 of the party guests had reached out to her, wanting to apologize to me. The church had recovered some funds through insurance and was using the rest to create a financial abuse awareness program. Dale had been arrested for a DUI. Janet was getting divorced after her husband learned about her knowledge of Amber's assault and her silence about it. The ripples keep spreading, Rachel said. Your courage in speaking up, it changed things. I wasn't brave, I admitted. I was just done. There's a difference. The next morning, I did a final walkthrough of the apartment, checking every cabinet and closet. In the bathroom medicine cabinet, I found a photo I'd hidden there years ago. Mom and me at my college graduation, both smiling, before Raymond entered our lives. I looked at it for a long moment, then left it on the counter. That girl, that relationship, that life, they were gone. The drive to Charlotte took 3 hours. My new apartment was smaller but brighter, with windows facing east toward the sunrise. My new job at a Fortune 500 company's logistics division paid 30% more than Westport. I had no family here, no history, no one who knew my story unless I chose to tell it. 6 months later, I got a call from Dana Richardson. Raymond's appeal had been denied. He'd been transferred to federal prison in Pennsylvania, where he'd serve at least 10 years. Mom had filed for divorce from Florida. Tyler had joined the military. The house had been sold to pay partial restitution to the victims. You did the right thing, Dana said. I know it doesn't feel like winning, but you saved other women from him. Amber especially wanted me to thank you. After she hung up, I stood on my balcony, looking out at a city where I was nobody special, where no one knew about the birthday party or the $90,000 or the 6 years of humiliation. Where I was just Emily, starting over at 30, building a life that was entirely my own. Some people get redemption stories. Some get revenge stories. Mine was simpler an escape story. I'd walked away from the ashes of what they burned, and I didn't look back to watch them smolder in the ruins. The girl who'd fallen at that party, humiliated and bleeding while 37 people laughed. She'd gotten up. She'd fought back. She'd won, and then she'd disappeared, leaving nothing behind but the echo of truth in a small town that would never forget what happened when they chose to laugh instead of help. I was free, finally, completely, irreversibly free. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but sometimes the hardest truths need to be told. If you're listening to this from your car, your workplace, or maybe late at night when you can't sleep, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I'd love to connect with you. Please subscribe to the channel if my story resonated with you, and share your thoughts below. Have you ever had to stand up to a toxic family situation? Your experiences matter, and this community is here to listen.